I'll begin by saying, first, we are excited to welcome our students back from winter break on Monday. Um, and we do so with much consideration around how do we do that, taking in consideration the safety of the staff, the students and families, and the community, because that does remain at the top of our priority. Um, as we think about the decision and decision to be able to return students on Monday, I'll begin by saying that we have been planning for this. We're approaching 2 years of managing this pandemic, and we have to take all of the lessons learned to be able to protect the interests of teaching and learning for our students, but doing so in the most healthy and safe way possible. So we have been planning, and we are ready to have them return. We're prepared. Teaching and learning can and indeed must continue on Monday. And so we have been discussing all of the considerations. We meet with our county officials, our Department of Health and Human Services every week. And oftentimes over the past few weeks, met with them several times a week to engage in conversations around what's the impact of the Omicron variant in Montgomery County. What are the implications for the school system? And what are some key measures that we will put in place to make sure that we can protect teaching and learning, but do so safely? So we have been collaborating with them in making the decisions that are best for our students and our community, and taking everything into consideration to, again, protect those two interests: continuing teaching and learning in person, because we know that does matter for our students, and doing so safely. So there are a number of things that we've included in these discussions over time that we just continue to take in consideration. What's happening locally, and so that's why we engage in these discussions with our Department of Health and Human Services, because when we look at the school system, we are a part of Montgomery County as a whole. And then let's also, take into consideration we are the DMV area, and so many of us work, live, travel, play in many of these areas. And so we talk about what are the implications in Montgomery County, but in the neighboring jurisdictions, and how that then impacts what it looks like in our school system. The other part that we talked about was we do contact tracing in our schools all the time, and we are really paying attention to the positive case rate in each of our schools individually. So last week we came on and talked about our threshold of what would happen if we needed to close a particular school. And we do not have any schools that have met that threshold that would say that we need to close at this point. And so that was our key consideration in discussing that. And we came, and that's why we had the press conference with Dr. Bridgers a week or so ago, because we wanted to be clear with the community around how do we go about making these decisions and what do we take into consideration. And so here we are, again, still keeping that threshold in mind, but doing everything that we can to say, well, in order to keep us from reaching those thresholds in school with as much as is within our power to do so, there are definitely some particular safety measures that we want to put in place, which is exactly what we're doing. And I'll be happy to share those with you. So I say to them that there are a number of factors that we should consider. Um, First is we do want to protect in-person learning. We have learned many lessons throughout this pandemic, and so we know all of the things that we need to take into consideration as we navigate. And what we've learned is we need to differentiate for every school based on what the COVID cases represent. So that's exactly what we're doing, and to try to make that decision for all of our schools, which is a one size fits all model, just doesn't work when we really think about how do we want to protect the interests of in-person learning. Secondly, we also continue to take into consideration um, when we do have to provide virtual learning for our students, under what conditions do we want to do that? And so we've been communicating with our families all along around what those conditions are, and we do have to move to virtual. Here's what you should expect. There's another factor that I want to bring into play here, and I think this impacts what we're seeing in Montgomery County to those who are considering virtual, as well as across the nation. We have to think about the resources. So yes, some school systems across the nation, some made a decision to close or to go virtual, but they're also depending on having resources to be able to test all students and all staff, and having the manpower to provide those tests if they don't have the rapid kit. And so resources are a big part of this conversation right now. And nationally, if everyone's trying to get access to tests or to testing prior to school, quite frankly, that is something that we have to take into consideration, because if we in Montgomery County, we're the largest school system in the state. If we're also working to get resources in this pool of resources that we have available in the state, giving us more time for virtual for another 2 days or a week may not guarantee that everyone will be able to have access, because we're also trying to get access to resources as every other school system is. And so why compromise not having our students in person when we actually can do some things that can help keep our students and staff safe as much as possible to help address the continuation of the spread of COVID-19. Absolutely. And I'm so glad you asked that question. We're in a school system that serves 159,000 plus students. Um, that's a large number. And to make a decision that impacts every single one of them in the same way is, I believe, not as intentional as we could be when we think about the disruption of the teaching and learning process. So, yes, we did take that into consideration because when we look at transmission rates in different communities, the information that we look at across the county, that heat map clearly lets us know oftentimes, what's happening in different communities and how we have to take things like that into consideration when it comes down to planning for our schools. And so I do believe that it is about being very intentional and very specific as we make decisions about students and their learning and the health and safety context of all of that when we make those decisions, and to do that school by school versus all 209 schools is an intentional specific approach. So we are fortunate to be in a county, and we've had testing stations set up across our county over a period of time to be able to provide families the opportunity to have students tested before they return to school. I mean, some of our families knew they were traveling, and so they planned for it and scheduled tests weeks out from the winter break, just making sure that they were doing their part. Uh, as I pass and I drive into the office, I'm passing uh, 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 places and they have long lines of people waiting to go in and take the test. So that is a real situation right now. And again, that's not just here in Montgomery County, but across the nation. And what I can say is that we are fortunate to be in a county that does understand how important it is to take into consideration the needs of the school system, because in our partnership with the county government, we are going to be able to provide all students and staff with a rapid test kit over the next 2 weeks. And so for those who are able to test before coming back into school on Monday, great. For those who do not have access to a test, we have been able to work with the county to secure that. And so we look forward to that. And the county does not have enough rapid tests for students and staff to take them prior to the return on school on January 3rd. Uh, and again, when we think about all of the necessities of running the school system, we are in fact a school system, and so we have to rely on many others to help us get access to resources to help protect the interests of the health and safety of our students and staff. And so securing the test is absolutely one. Sure. So all staff will receive KN95 masks next week as another layer of protection, and we will provide a new mask each week for our staff. Now, this is another layer of protection that we're providing for our staff, but we have been providing masks generally to any of our staff and students who need them since we returned to school in the fall. So we are increasing the type of protection that we're providing. And again, we always think about how do we do that with the resources that are available and providing them in our schools. So that has been a priority since we returned in the fall and continues to be a priority. So we're making every effort to have them in on day one, but we're saying that we'll provide them throughout next week because we are still waiting for delivery of some of those masks. And the ones that we do have, we will start to administer them. So our goal is we plan to be able to give them to all staff in all 209 schools and in other offices. But we definitely want to make the commitment and share up front that we may not get them into every single staff member's hand on the first day, but we do make a commitment to do so throughout the week. Yes, so we ask the same of our staff that we do of our students. If they have contacted COVID-19 and have a positive test, they are to let us know. And so we'll rely on our systems like our substitute teachers who have been helpful to us in the process and other staff members who are in the building. We have staff members who have stepped in a number of different positions to help support the teaching and learning that needs to take place for students if something happens and a teacher cannot be there. Again, I think this just speaks to the commitment of we all have a role and a responsibility in making this construct of education work for our students. And so we are moving in so many different lanes to help support one another. to make sure that we're providing whatever the service is for our students as we bring them into our school buildings, whether it is services around meals, teaching and learning, whatever it may be, so that we can make sure that they have the services that they need. Sure. I just wanted to say this is a community effort, and so we really depend on everyone to do their part. So as we prepare to open up on Monday and have our students to return, I encourage our families to report any positive cases. It's very easy. They should visit the MCPS website, and right at the top of the website, they can click and report if they have a positive case for a student who's in our school system. And that way, we're able to transfer that information to our schools and make decisions based on that. So we really depend on our families to communicate with us so that we can make the best decisions possible with the information that we have. And second, I continue to say getting our children tested for COVID-19, if it is possible, is continuing to be a priority as we prepare to open back up on Monday. So if that's a possibility, we want our families to do that. Third, if a child is sick and presenting symptoms, we ask our families to keep the child at home or the student at home and get them tested if they have symptoms. And then the fourth request that I have of our community is to continue to engage in saying yes to the test by consenting to testing. We're going to be increasing our random testing within our schools all month. And so the only way that that's able to operationalize into a meaningful initiative for us is if we have all of our families say, yes, I agree to get my child tested at school. So I ask our families to continue to do that. And then one other important factor that I want to mention, transparency is really important in this process as our families try to be aware of information and what's happening locally at their schools as we monitor the transmission rates as well. So beginning on Monday and continuing every school day, we will post a report of positive cases by school on our website so that our families can see that. So hopefully that will be helpful and our families will be able to see what that looks like. But I do have confidence in the fact that our random sampling of students in our schools, as we continue to increase that, we'll be able to better monitor exactly what the impact of particularly this new Omicron variant will be and how we address the needs as we continue throughout this month and the month of January and the coming months ahead.